Hi, and welcome to another episode of Starship Gaming, and today we are going to talk about the Philips CDI and why it failed. So, let me start out by saying, contrary to belief, the Philips CDI did not absolutely suck. It actually was I guess you could say, a predecessor to the PlayStation 1 in terms of using CD-ROM and whatnot. So it's basically the ancestor to the PS1. And the reason we can say that is in regards to Nintendo trying to partner. Well, originally they partnered with Philips, and what happened was they decided to partner with Sony instead, and that ended up failing. And both failed ventures led to game consoles, with the latter being Sony PlayStation, PS1, and then before that, the Philips CDI. So the Philips CDI was released in December 1991, and it mainly was advertised through television commercials. A few of them had Phil Hartman in them. If you remember, of course, Phil Hartman was a genius. Someone we tragically lost. But the Philips CDI was released in 1991, and it actually sold until 1996, and in some cases as late as 1998. So it was, out there for a while. What's really interesting about that is that it had some Nintendo licensed characters in their games, like, for example, Hotel Mario, and there was 2 Legend of Zelda related games, but that was basically the leftover of the deal that Philips had with Nintendo, and there was nothing Nintendo could do about it. And both of those games are, well, I should say all 3 of those games are absolutely terrible. Of course, I was reading, and I think it is confirmed, there was going to be like a Super Mario World game released for the Philips CDI. I don't know if it was supposed to be like Super Mario World 2 or whatever that deal was, but it was never finished. But the story behind the CDI is really interesting, especially when you come to the fact that it wanted to be like a multimedia player. There was a module for the model you see on the screen here, that plugged into the back where you could watch, I believe it was video CD or CD video. I'm kind of confused. I'm pretty sure it's video CD. CD video came, well, whatever. It played basically movies on a CD-ROM, which you could buy. In addition to playing games, you could also play music on it, audio CD, so it could do all of that. And at one point, they made a model that could connect to the internet. I actually own a Philips CDI. I actually ended up with one by accident. I was at a Goodwill one day, and I told them, I said, "Hey, do you have any CD players?" Because I was putting together a stereo system. I had Pioneer equipment and everything, and I wanted to try to find Pioneer, and they're like, we got a Philips system. And I'm like, okay, and they bring it out, and I take a look at it, and I'm like, how much do you want for it? And they're like, $2. And I go, okay. And it took me at least an hour to figure out that it was a Philips CDI, because I'd never seen one in my life. At least not this model as you see on screen. This is the one I ended up with. I've seen the other models and assumed that was just the general design of the Philips CDI, but I'd never seen one like this. So let's get into the main thing you came for. Why did the Philips CDI fail? There were a number of factors. There was quite a few factors of why it failed. A lot of it was competition. You had competition At the time, it didn't have much competition until the, in terms of CD-ROM based game consoles, until the Sega CD and the was it Panasonic 3DO. Actually, they're 3DO, Gold Star, Panasonic. You get the picture. Until it came onto the scene, and of course, you had the other consoles that were released at the time: Sega Genesis, TurboGrafx 16, Super Nintendo, things like that. And then, of course, when Sony PlayStation came on the scene, that kind of just wiped it completely off the map. But it hung in there for a good long time, and considering at least 5 years, unless you considered they sold as late as 1998 in some markets. And of course, what's ironic about that is that Philips licensed the technology to other companies like Sony. Sony had a version, pretty much, which is very ironic. Another factor was, of course, price. When it launched in 1991, it was $1,000. And of course, the point to that is not very many people could afford that in 1991 unless you were very well off. $1,000 was a lot, let alone $300 consoles in 1991 or $200 consoles. Thousands even a lot today. For me, I'm somewhat of a budget gamer. Of course, you have the Xbox One X, which is $400, and there's talk that the PS5 and the next Xbox, which is currently called Project Scorpio, is going to be well over $500. So, that's, well, let me put it this way. My parents did end up dishing out $800 for a PlayStation 3 once, and this was back around 2006. Of course, they were going for about that price, but certain stores were selling them for more. And my parents were like, well, we're going to get the best for our son, and they ended up getting me a PS3. But price was a major factor of why the Philips CDI failed. And of course, if we have to go into other factors now, game selection was another reason why. And then, of course, the obvious availability. When they first went out for sale, they were not available in stores. I don't know if they ever were, but it seemed like from the information I've gathered, of course I didn't grow up in the era that these were released. I slightly remember the last half of it, but I never did see them in stores. I didn't even know about the Philips CDI until a friend was telling me about it back in 2006. I just had a vague idea up to that point what the Philips CDI was, because I'd heard about it. But availability, there were infomercials, and you would call and you could order it, and I think that was one of the main ways how you could get it back then. Of course, I don't know if they had payment plans or what. They probably did based on the price, but other than that, I can't gather much information about it unless I get a first-hand account from somebody who actually had one. So, like I said, there were just so many factors, and why it failed. And I think it could have had a lot of potential, but it just failed to meet the mark on so many levels. But that is our video. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit the bell if you want notifications of when we do more awesome videos. And until next time, I will see ya.